Hello, and thank you for joining me today as we begin our discussion on the cardiovascular system or the circulatory system. So, today we're going to start by talking about blood. And so, at the end of this section or segment of notes, you will be able to describe the four components of blood, explain how the structure of an erythrocyte relates to its function and what an erythrocyte is, and compare red blood cell counts between individuals and predict their lifestyle differences accordingly. So, let's get started. So first off, blood is made of a couple different things. 45% of your blood composition is actually made of these red blood cells, which are important. We're going to talk about those a little bit more. But 45% of the blood in your body is red blood cells. And so got kind of a review question is, where are red blood cells made? And so if you think back, we talked in Unit 3, we talked about bones. Your red blood cells are made in your red bone marrow, which is found in flat and irregular bones primarily. And so that's red blood cells. They also have these things called white blood cells, which have an immune function we'll talk a little bit about, along with platelets, which clot your blood, and then the remaining portion is plasma. And so plasma and your red blood cells account for 99 point some odd percent of your blood alone. You have very low white blood cell counts unless you're sick. And you don't have a ton of platelets either, unless you're bleeding and need to clot something. And so that is how what your blood is made up of at the moment. And so here you can see red blood cells. Here are some red blood cells and white blood cells, and so on and so forth. Again, another diagram showing you a lot of red blood cells. And then we get into, here are some different blood cell types. And so we have a stem cell, which is a hemocytoblast, hemo being blood, cyto referring to cell, blast being pre-cell or a forming cell. And then they split off into these different types of cells. So you have your erythrocytes up top, your platelets are next, your neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, monocytes, and then lymphocytes. These are all types of white blood cells. And so we'll talk about those when we get to the white blood cell portion of this information. Your red blood cells, these are also called erythrocytes. So there's our scientific term is called erythrocytes. They have a shape, it's called biconcave. Bi being two, concave referring to the shape. And so caves, there's concave and there's convex. So if I'm this person who's discombobulated, and I'm looking into a cave, the cave looks like so, with the walls going this way. Okay, this is a concave structure. If it was convex, it would be the other way. It would be out this way, kind of like glasses are convex. This is concave. Because this is biconcave, bi being two, there's actually a concave portion on the other side, which looks like this. And so this is kind of what your red blood cells look like. Obviously, they're more rounded at the top as opposed to straight, flat lines. But this is what biconcave means. You have both sides bending in. Red blood cells do not have a nucleus. They do during early development, but as they differentiate out, they lose that nucleus. They can't perform protein synthesis, they can't divide, and they constantly need replaced. So your red blood cells don't last for an extended period of time. They constantly need replaced, and that's what happens in your red bone marrow. Again, they originate from a hemocytoblast, so a stem cell, and then they have a couple functions. So major functions of red blood cells. One, you transport oxygen. Gases, yes, specifically oxygen. The component in that is called a hemoglobin. It's a hemoglobin, requires iron, and this gives blood its color. And the reason that it has this biconcave shape up here is in order to increase the surface area to expose it to more hemoglobin, or expose the hemoglobin to more oxygen. And so this is to maximize surface area. And that's why it's that structure specifically. Continuing on with red blood cells, we have the average person. Average male has between 4.6 and 6.2 million red blood cells per cubic millimeter. That is a lot, in case anybody's wondering. Or per milliliter of blood is the same setup. Okay, so it's 4.6 to 6.2. That's a drastic difference, but that's the range. It's about 1.6 million difference between top and bottom. Females have less on average, between 4.2 and 5.4. Children have kind of in the middle somewhere, 4.5 to 5.1 million red blood cells per, again, cubic millimeter of blood. And so your body, if we were to drain all of your blood out of your body, you would lose roughly 8% of your weight. You'd also not be living, so don't try that. But 8% of your mass is blood, which equates to about 5 liters. So average person, about 5 liters of blood, which is the same as 5 million cubic millimeters. And so with all this, you end up with somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 trillion red blood cells when all is said and done. So this number per cubic millimeter, take that times thousands, millions, billions, times 5 million cubic millimeters, and you get somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 trillion red blood cells. That's a lot. If they need, so we said they need replaced. So the ones that have been out and about need broken down, need recycled. This happens in your liver and your spleen. And this is where the iron from the hemoglobin is recycled, reused, put into your new red blood cell, again to do the same function in the end. A couple more facts on erythrocytes, your red blood cells, your erythrocytes. So vitamin B12 and folic acid, or vitamin B9, both assist with the function of DNA synthesis. All right, so these vitamins are important to carry on your bloodstream, which can then be diffused into cells and used to assist with DNA synthesis. You also have iron. It's very important that we have iron in our bodies. This is found in hemoglobin, and so the function of it is to carry oxygen. So if you don't have enough iron in your body, you can't carry enough oxygen to your cells, and your cells suffer because they aren't getting enough oxygen to them. If you have a lack of iron, so a deficiency in iron, we call that anemia. And so anemia reduces your oxygen carrying capacity of blood. People may appear pale, have decreased energy. If you think of the sickle cell anemia is the common disorder. So sickle cell anemia, we'll talk more about it. The blood cells don't have the biconcave shape, and they can't carry as much oxygen as a result. And so that is sickle cell anemia, and that is kind of how red blood cells function with it. Here are some review questions for you to get you started on the cardiovascular system. I'd like you to work through these. If you have questions, be sure to ask when you return to class. I look forward to seeing you again here soon. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.